Hey everyone, so this is Kalia with All Fun and James, and this is my second video on my Lent series. I know I promised to do one last week, and I totally had every intention of doing it last week, but then it just didn't happen. So I'm going to do two this week. That is at least my goal. Okay, anyway, but to get to this, so like I said, I'm doing this series on Lent to kind of just talk about what it is, why we do it, but some of the things that also just are on my heart as I'm going through Lent. This Lent, I'm doing kind of a combination of what to give up as I've gone and how I'm fasting in this way. If you are interested about kind of how I talk through more things about what is Lent, why we fast, what those things are, you can check out the previous video, which is part 1 of this series. And I kind of start that on Ash Wednesday. So go first and check that out. If you want to, pause this one and go back and check that. On your way, you can always subscribe to our channel as you go, but also subscribe so you know more about this series, and you can also hear the rest of my weeks and on this journey. So like I said, we are now almost 2 weeks into Lent, and I have decided to do a combination of fasting in this time. As I said in my previous video, this is to represent the 40 days that Jesus fasted and prayed in the desert. And so for me, I'm doing a couple days each week, or a day or a couple meals where I'm fasting food and taking that time out to pray specifically. And then there's other times that it's kind of me just like cutting out specific things. Right now I've decided to cut out alcohol, but that doesn't highly affect me because I actually don't drink very often. But it was just something that it was even just to have one more thing in my social life that is like a sometimes I'm in a choir, and sometimes we have wine after our practices and things like that. And so it's just one of those specific things, essential, that I actually have to think about in my situations where, it's presented to me in a common place, and I make a decision to abstain. And that's actually kind of more the reason that I did it, is because it was a social situation where I actually have to make a decision to abstain from it. And that's going great. It's a great thing. It's also really great to, because people talk a lot about, so fasting, when it talks about fasting in the Bible, and when Jesus talks about fasting specifically, he talks about, don't be like the Pharisees and cry and wail and put ashes on your head and look terrible when you're fasting because you're like, oh, woe to me, I'm fasting. That's actually not what fasting is supposed to be like. He says, do it in secret, don't tell people about it, wash your face, put oil on your head, all these things. Basically, it's meant to be in your regular day life, and it's meant to be a moment of you actually doing something as a choice, as you're choosing to acknowledge that this is an important element of your spiritual walk and an important element of a discipline, because it is a discipline. Fasting is a discipline. It's not meant to be easy. Giving up, food or something like that, it's not meant to be that's not like the natural body process. So in that, but it's also not supposed to be something of that you're just presenting to everybody to say, oh, so I'm so sorry, I'm fasting. I can't have chocolate because I'm fasting, or I can't have alcohol because I'm fasting, That also is not the purpose of it. And so if it is your first time fasting, or if it's something new to you, also, I do encourage some type of accountability. It doesn't need to be announced to the world. And I know some of you will actually probably be like, well, Kalia, why are you doing YouTube videos about fasting then? The biggest reason that I'm doing it is because it's already a part of my yearly spiritual walk, my yearly rituals of spiritual walk. I normally, if there's not another time that I feel like the Lord is actually specifically asking me to fast, because I don't fast unless I feel like God is asking me to, But there's 2 times that I always do some type of fasting in the Christian calendar. 2 times a year that I've put into my life, and I've done this for several years. Lent is one of the times that I practice fast, and then also the other time that I do is I actually celebrate Yom Kippur, which is the Jewish festival of it's the Day of Atonement, and that's it's one of the high holidays where they actually it's right after or like it's right before. Right before. Oh gosh, I'm gonna have to look this up now. Dang it, I know this, but it's right after. I think it's right after. But it's you're about to celebrate New Year. You're about to celebrate Rosh Hashanah, and basically you kind of like examine your year. You make right with people. They study the book of Jonah, and how you follow the Lord. And following his will, and those things. But the point of these fasting times is actually to refocus on the Lord. And so for me, Lent is not a Jewish holiday, but Lent is a traditionally, a Protestant Catholics, Catholics, some Protestants celebrate it like it's still kind of like a part of the Christian calendar. It was not in the tradition that I grew up in, like I said previously, but it's a choice that I made because I believe in celebrating things with the global church. Same thing with the Jewish holidays. I'm not Jewish. I do not celebrate it the same way that a Jew does, and it's not meant as any type of cultural appropriation. It's actually meant as a religious practice that I do. The way that I do mine is differently than a Jew does. Obviously, I don't normally attend synagogue, but I do follow a fasting ritual at that time. I read the book of Jonah. I study it. There's all things that I think are valuable in those religious practices. So with all that, but getting back to my question of why are you doing this on YouTube, Kalia? It is because I think that people need to know that this is still a practice. This is something that some people may have more questions about. And also it's not just a pastor or a priest or somebody else. It's somebody who actually does this in their normal life and in like as a Christian and a believer and follower of Jesus, that it can be something that's very normative, and spiritual disciplines should be normative in your life. And so sometimes it can be very intimidating to start one of these or try one of these things. I was actually incredibly encouraged when I started Lent. I did, sometimes the only people that I usually tell are obviously, like I lots of times will tell my family members, or if people are living with me, like I find that as a courtesy, because I don't want my husband to like make dinner and then I'll be like, oh, I'm fasting, I can't, or like, oh, I'm not eating. That's kind of rude. And also, so I tell, I'll tell my mom and dad, and this time I actually invited some people to join me. And it was kind of fun to have my niece, who is 12 years old, say, oh, what's this? Oh, I want to try some of that. And so I know that she tried a few days she fasted, that she did her lunch. And that gave her not only an opportunity to talk to me about that spiritual discipline as a young child, but also then it really was something to talk to her mom about, because even as a young teenage girl, she needs to know that this isn't something of like allowing an eating disorder of any kind. This is something actually that like can be actually really difficult for teenagers because of that, because they think, if you don't understand the spiritual discipline of it, then you also might mistake it for some type of diet or eating disorder, like borderline eating disorder type of things that are really unhealthy. And I think that's what people get this mixed up with so often. That is not what this is. Obviously, there are things when you do these in more extensive and serious ways that can affect your health. That's why these practices are actually like something that you should or can talk to your doctor about before you practice them. But it's also a discipline that you have to be wise about, and you actually have to make health choices around it. It's such a conscious choice because you have to make healthy choices around it for it to actually be a sustainable practice. And you're not practicing it all the time every day. Skipping 2 meals is not going to kill you, and it's not going to send you into an eating disorder, and it's not going to send you. Now, if you struggle with those things and those are triggers for you, BT dub, trigger warning. If you struggle with those things, and that is an issue for you, that is something that you need to think of. And if you want to still practice a type of fast, don't practice the fasting that is a trigger warning. Don't do food. Don't do something that is going to be seriously so unhealthy for you that it's going to get wrapped in your mind, and it no longer becomes a spiritual discipline, but it becomes a way that the enemy can work against you. That's not what you need to do. That's what if you struggle with something, which as a person who struggled with an eating disorder at once in her life, yes, I did. And there was a time of my life where I could not do food fasting, and it was not healthy for me. And I have to search my heart even when I start to do a food fast, because I'm like, am I okay? Am I gonna be okay? Or is this me going to get wrapped up in my head about my weight, about all these things, So what's my reasoning for fasting? Do I really feel like God is telling me to fast? Or am I just doing this because I wanna lose a couple extra pounds? That's not a reason. And then I need to not do it. Make smart choices, make godly choices, pray about your choices before you're gonna do something that's so hyper spiritual, okay? But find what works for you. Talk to a mentor, talk to a spiritual mom or dad, talk to somebody who you trust and can say, hey, how is this some way that I can practice, or what does this do? And getting to the point of knowing what to fast, knowing how to fast, that's also, a point. So anyway, I have been chattering on for already a good 12 minutes. So I think that's probably it. But if you'd like to continue on this journey, I also just want to encourage you, if you are fasting or if you've already started this journey of fasting in this Lent time, make sure that you are doing something. My last thought, make sure that you are, obviously you need to be praying and doing something spiritual as a replacement for what you're fasting. But there are helpful tools. I use YouVersion app, and there are Bible plans along with it. I'm currently reading one with 4 other spiritual sisters of mine. All of us decided to do Lent together and read something specific to go along. I'm doing a study called Lent for Everyone. It's by N.T. Wright. N.T. Wright's stellar, going through the book of Matthew on this journey. And I just wanted to also even point out I love how they're doing, we're going through the book of Matthew, but then on Sundays, the reading is always from the Psalms. This last one, this week was from Psalm 125, Psalm 122. But it's I will lift up my eyes to the hill from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. I just love that verse. He was saying something about, you're looking up towards the hills, but actually it's not the hills where your help comes from. It's actually beyond the hills. It's towards the Lord. So in this time, be encouraged. Look toward the Lord for your help, for your sustenance. That's really what fasting is about, is looking towards the Lord for your sustenance. So have a great day, guys. Love you all, and peace out. I will get another video too in a couple days, okay? Ciao.